Well, Sarah asked me to, because I'm always telling her stories, and I have always wanted to have my family hear some of my stories. But now that she's got this film on my face, I can't think of a thing. But I would like to take this chance because it's just after our conference to tell first of all, to tell everybody in the family how much I love them and how proud I am of all the members of my family. And I also want to tell them what a strong testimony I have. I know Dad and I tried to tell you that before in the book that we put together. And I know that Dad had a strong testimony until the end of his life. But primarily, the reason that I developed this is because of the work that I did in the latter part of my life. And I want to add that I really was impressed with conference 2 weeks ago with the quality of the individuals that are leading our church. I feel like the story of a young boy who dug these ancient plates out of a hill, out of an Indian mound, and saw the Father and the Son would be unbelievable until I look at the quality of the men that are leading the church now, and I don't think they would have been fooled. And I know that for the last part of my life, I spent a lot of time doing research. I was able to get my master's degree in early Mormon history. And I've got my book here. I was looking up a little bit about it. It's called The First London Mormons. And this book, in everything that I have written, and a lot of it has been published in major journals, I had to document. And so I've had a chance to see whether somebody has put something funny together that we're supposed to believe. The documentations that I've done, I think in one of the essays I wrote, historical essays, I think there were 97 different documentations in there. We're going to listen to my clock sing for you. And this is what happened with every research project that I had, including my thesis. That's probably where I learned how to document. And as I was looking this up today and looking up, what has been put on film at different libraries, this one has been put on film completely, and with all the documentation in at least 3 major libraries, and I'm very proud of that. And I've had a number of other books, such as this one about one of our leaders at the Family History Library, who had a lot to do with the microfilming, and they asked me to do a book about him. And this book is totally documented, and it is in a major libraries, several major libraries. The reason I have felt that sometimes we're people who have I don't know how to say the word, but have a reason for causing trouble or questioning and everything, have really not spent the time they have needed to learn about the church. And that's what I think, that I was lucky enough to be in a position where I could do that. For 10 years I was on editorial board of the Journal of Mormon History. And I had quite a few things published in there. And I know every time I publish there, and I'm going to talk about one particular publication there pretty soon, but every time they were just totally documented. And the editor was so strong on this. And this is one thing that I have learned how to do, is how to document. The reason this has been on my mind so much lately, Sarah came home a couple of weeks ago, and she had been, I guess she'd been teaching or assisted teaching a seminary that morning early, and her co-teacher had told her about this new history that the church had put out called Saints, which is was the first of 4 histories of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And this one goes up until the Nauvoo period. This is a book. Look at the size of that. Anyhow, so Sarah came home and she says, "Guess what, Mom? You're in the book." And I just couldn't believe it. But we looked it up, and sure enough, I was quoted in the book. And also, the particular thing that I was quoted about, as I shall talk about later, was put in such a way that someone could, let's see, where do I have this letter? I think the word from the editor, when he was writing me, he said, we were able to use and cite to your excellent article on the Transfiguration of Brigham Young, in explaining that key moment in our history, and to cite it, but also so that it could be copied on microfiche or microfilm, or however they do with the new records, that it could be copied to anyone's computers. And so I was so proud of that, and also proud when I learned that the young man that was the prime editor of this particular issue, and I guess he will be the other 4, was the young man that I'd known when he was about 13, and he took us, it was in my Sunday school class, and I was teaching about early church history, and he really fell in love with it, and as I say, is one of the editors of the first, and will be of the rest of the issues of Saints. As I said, I was about 10 years, I was on the editorial staff of Journal of Mormon History, and about 18 years I worked directly at the Family History Library of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And then after that, I was a volunteer as a missionary there for at least 6 more years. And I also volunteered before I even started, which was fun. So I had a lot of experience there. I also taught, besides writing a lot of papers. I taught for Brigham Young University and for the University of Utah. They are seminary teachers. They call them their institute teachers. I taught some of their classes, besides teaching a lot of classes at the Family History Library and various historical subjects and how to do genealogy. Because of all the experience I had in documenting and making sure that what I was saying is true, I feel very strongly and very proud of my testimony. And I'm a little irritated when I learn that someone has come along and criticized and talked, because I talked against the church, because I know they don't know as much about it as I do, and I don't. It sounds like I'm really bragging, but I know the hours I spent going to original source records and finding out what was happening at that time and finding out what these people knew. The one that, the particular article that is referenced for me in Saints has to do with the transfiguration of the mantle of Joseph Smith. That is when Joseph appeared, or Brigham Young appeared as Joseph. And as I did my research, I determined that not only did he appear once, he appeared 3 times. And I believe strongly that there can be manifestations that happen at various times. They don't always happen at the same time. And I feel very strongly that if we pray, if we want to know, that we will find out these things. I started becoming interested in genealogy and family history when I was living in California. And at that time, I'd been volunteering. They had a little branch library there, and I'd been volunteering there. And I remember that the Roots phenomena came along. And at that time, I was, as I said, it was just kind of a hobby with me. But when the Roots phenomena came along.
And what is the Roots phenomena for those who don't know?
That was a TV series, and it told about the Roots was about the black people coming to America, first as slaves in horrible ships, and then later working on plantations and the Civil War, and following all of this information about a family of black people coming to America. Well, the man that wrote Roots, it was about his family, said that if he'd have known about the family history library in Salt Lake City, he could have written about twice as fast because the Salt Lake Library has so much information. And so it has become a tremendous hobby now with so many people. Even last Christmas, my daughter and son-in-law had me get my DNA so I could find out what kind of DNA I had, and that was fun to follow through. But before that, no one was really much interested in genealogy, but the Roots, this Roots series that was on TV, really stimulated a lot of people. And as a result, I was invited to teach genealogy because there weren't genealogy teachers around that time. They're all over the place now. But I was offered jobs, teaching jobs at 2 of the junior colleges in California, West Valley College, and I can't think of the other one right now, Foothill. And so there were 2 of them that I taught various classes, or Roots classes, and it was interesting to me. I loved it, but I had a degree, teaching credential, and my teaching credential went up through junior college, but it was to teach history and to teach English. And so I needed to have it renewed. So when I sent it to Sacramento to have it renewed, I indicated that I'd been volunteering at this genealogy library and teaching these evening classes. And as a result, when my credential came back from the state of California, there at the top as the teaching subjects that I was supposedly do about was history, English, and genealogy. And I think that I was one of the very first people that had a credential from the state of California to teach genealogy in the colleges. Anyway, we moved to Salt Lake about 1980, maybe a little before, not much.
1981.
1981.
Mm-hmm.
Anyhow,
I graduated in 82, so that's how I know.
We did move, and I decided I would volunteer down there, down at the Family History Library. And as I said, I did have a credential. But I started volunteering, and Sarah even went down with me for a little bit while we were volunteering at the old building. And by the way, Sarah, they still have the new building as a genealogy library, the building itself. I looked it up. It's called History Library though now. Anyhow. But anyhow, they moved from one building to the next. And that was about the time that Sarah was called on a mission. But before she was called on her mission, why she volunteered with me. And I have to tell a story about Sarah after she got off her mission. I believe this is when it happened. She volunteered again at the library. By then
It was actually before my mission.
Was it?
Mm-hmm.
Anyway.
Yeah, I worked there before my mission, not after.
I know you did. But afterwards, you started volunteering again. Yes, let me tell you.
I got married right after. I didn't volunteer.
I know, but you came down with me and you were going to volunteer. And anyhow, I think you came down as a volunteer a couple of times because the woman who was in charge of the department that you were working as a clerk helping people. She came to me and says, "How come Sarah hasn't applied for a job here?" And I said, "Well, she can't. I'm working here, and they say that 2 people can't work here, 2 family members." And she says, "I'm in charge of this department, and I want Sarah to work for me." And so you immediately got something.
Yeah, that was before my mission.
Was that before your mission?
That was the year I met George.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that was so funny because I said, "How come she hasn't applied to work here?" I says, "Well, two of us can't. I just assumed we had to follow the rules." But she says, "These are the rules." Anyhow, I remember that because you did such a good job. That's why I wanted to bring that up. Anyhow, so I've had about listed in this for these worldwide libraries. I've had at least 8 of my research projects that have been published in the Journal of Mormon History and BYU Studies and Utah State History and various. I've had at least 8 of them that are listed as people can still have access to them. So anyhow, working was just a wonderful thing for me, and I was very grateful that I had the opportunity. Now I'd like to come back to the fact that, as I said, Sarah came home and told me that I was in this new book called Sayings. And at this point in my life, I live with Sarah and George. I have my own little apartment off to one side, and I'm very happy here, and they're so good to me, and I'm so grateful for them. But at any rate,
Just a second.